Alright, in our last videos we have covered a lot of Active Directory, users and computer setup. Now, in our last videos we have mentioned about group policy, and understanding about group policy even at the IT support level is very important, and there is a reason behind it. So let's go ahead and first of all, why do you need to learn about group policy for skills development? Just like Active Directory, users and computer training, we like to cover that because a lot of descriptions have it currently in when you go to Indeed.com or any other job descriptions, and in interview a lot of people ask for it. Just like that, group policy is another one that you're going to come across in the description. So there's two reasons why we need to cover group policy. One, if you're applying for jobs and you cover group policy just at a management level or understanding level, or you have done some projects in your home, it kind of makes your resume more valuable to the people who are looking for IT support professionals. And the second reason is that if you're looking at experience, for example, in this job they're putting this 1 year experience preferred. That doesn't mean that they must require that. So if you have group policy training already done, then these people, the people who are putting these numbers of years, kind of let go of that numbers, and they don't think about experience too much because you're presenting your skills just like any other IT professionals who would work in a real environment. Another reason for you to understand group policy is simple. Just like Active Directory, you need to understand how Active Directory works, not at the very advanced level. Just knowing that how Active Directory is connected, how users are connecting, how do you reset their password, just like that. You need to understand that when somebody create a domain controllers and domain network environment, a lot of policies are default, and it actually comes from group policy. So somebody have to change these policies to make sure that everything is working. So if somebody call you on a job that, hey, I want to change my password, do you know what is the complexity, or do you know what is the number of password that I need to use? So imagine if you don't know this type of knowledge, then of course you're just wandering around and you're asking people around, and then it takes you a lot of time. Even if you have landed a job in IT, some people just don't have this type of knowledge and they don't try to go beyond in their learning. So what happens to them is they work in the environment, they work in the companies, but they do repetitive tasks for many months, and then after some time they realize that, why am I doing this repetitive task so much? I need to move on, I need to learn more. And if you can learn this ahead of time smartly, this means even if you get a job at the entry level, and if that is your first job, you would have a great time troubleshooting systems, and you would have a clear way to move up in your career as well, because your mind is ready like that. You're smart learning, you're doing IT the smart way. You're not using an old school way where you're just going to get into a job and wait for 2 years, try to learn skills. That's not how it's done now these days. You want to move up very quickly. So with that said, you can clearly see that job description have group policies all over Indeed, and the titles are basically IT support help desk, IT support technician, help desk analyst, IT support technician remote, and everything will have a group policy, something like that. That's gonna basically go back to group policy. Now let's go back to a training. So now, of course, group policy, like I said, for a lot of our members who are taking group policy and they want to go beyond that, they can come to the video library, type group policy over here, and then you can see which courses are covering group policy. Like MD 100 courses covering that, MD 101 is covering that. There's more videos on that, chapters. There are server courses, for example, security management using group policy. There's so much going on in this that you can go beyond what we are going to cover today if you are a member of JSS. Now, if you of course have the light membership, then you have that sandbox access, and here we can practice on group policy. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you would do is to go back to your lab, and you would restart your whole lab. So I'm just going to go ahead and reset everything. So in your lab environment, when you turn on your whole lab in practice labs and you're using the sandbox, the PLAB DC01 is the domain controller, and basically a domain controller comes with group policy by default. So when you open your domain controller, you click on server manager, and then you click on tools, then you see you have Active Directory users and computers, but then there is group policy management as well. So when we're going to click on that now, just like you know that from Windows 10, if you remember, we added an RSAT tools. So let's say if somebody don't give you access to a group policy, now in most cases you're not gonna get a lot of access to group policy. Active Directory is fine because you're managing users, but in most of the environment you may not have access if you're an entry-level professional. But again, it really depends on the company. You may have it because they are doing certain things. They're implementing policies, they're deploying applications, they're doing a lot of things with group policy. Then maybe they to make sure that they're not doing a lot of these tasks, if it's a repetitive task, they may give you this kind of access. And then you can go to Practice Labs WinW10, and from here you can go to features and actually install group policy if you want to do it practice like that. So you can click on apps and features over here, and then we can basically click on optional features. And then of course we can come over here and then click on add feature. So you may see this error, and that's because you basically need to log in as an admin. Now even if you're logged in as an administrator account, that account does not have that kind of access. So you may have to come back over here, add yourself to Active Directory, go back and log in just like we did for our RSAT tool, and you need to log in and do find that, just like RSAT, you need to find the group policy management. But you don't have to do that in this lab environment. That was just to show you that you can manage just group policy management from Windows 10 if you want to practice it that way. But because these labs gets reset, then I think it's not easy for you to do that all the time. So just use the domain controller account, and when you come to tools, you open a group policy management. This is where things are running. Now before we jump in, what is group policy? So let's go to Microsoft definition. Group policy is an infrastructure that allows you to specify managed configuration for users. Now this is important, for users and computers through group policy settings and group policy preferences. What they're saying basically, that from this management piece, from here you can manage all the users and computers in a very granular way, meaning you can really go into a specifics of computers. Before you learn Active Directory, so you could only go to the Active Directory and open, let's say, users and computers, and you have limited kind of options where you can do like a little bit of active stuff, where you can come back over here, right click on a computer, users, reset their password. You can go to the properties, you can go to their profile. So you're kind of working on that level where things can be managed very quickly for passwords and everything. But what if this user log in and you don't want them to click on a taskbar? You want to block something. You want them to, when they go to the IE, it should just show one internet option. Or you may want to restrict a lot of access, meaning control panel. Even if they have limited access, you just don't want them to see things. So that's what we were talking about. Then you need a group policy for that sort of control. Or if you want to deploy applications, it can actually do that. If you want to attach printers, you can actually do that from group policy management. So when you come to the group policy, just like Active Directory, it has a structure. So if we come back, it says to configure group policy settings that affect only a local or a user, you can use a local group policy editor. So if I have a machine and that is not joined to a domain, let's say for now, I'm just going to say this is your laptop at your home. Can you open your laptop and type something like this, where you can just type local group policy or group editor? There you go. Edit group policy. Look, this is local. We know this is local. Why? Because this machine is currently not on domain. It's not connected to the domain. So that policies on the domain cannot be applied to this machine. And to verify that, I can go to the settings right now, and this is where you can see your settings, and you can go to security settings, and I can go to local policies, and then I can click on, let's say I'm gonna actually do account policies and password policies. So if you look at this right here, you see our local machine have all of this setup, which is 0 password remember, 0 days, 0 characters. Now that's a local group policy editor. Now this would be useful if you have 10 machines in a company and you don't want to be you don't have a domain controller, you don't have Active Directory, but you still want to control some of these settings in the local setup. You have 10 machines, you created an image of a machine, and in that image you came over here, you did like, let's say 50-60 policy changes. You came over here, you add this, you added things, you double click on this, you did a lot of things. So you took an image, you put it on those 10 machines, so now you have those 10 machines controlled by this group policy. But the problem with this is that you cannot just come and manage it from a central place. This would be a very hard thing to do unless you use some sort of extra software. That's maybe possible, but in a normal way, if you don't use any softwares and everything, that would be very hard for you to go to every computer and change policies. So for that reason, when the computers are joined to the domain, so now let's jump into the machine that is joined to the domain, and let's open a group policy in this machine. Now add a group policy. Now you see this is saying that you don't have access, so let's go ahead and actually create an account and just kind of do it that way, so we can do this better. So now we can come back over here, we're going to add a new account, we're going to name it help desk. So let's create this help desk account, we're going to finish it and make it an admin. We're going to go into properties, member off, and you should know this from our previous videos, from our Active Directory videos now, how to do all of this stuff. So this help desk, oops, we made the mistake. Okay, let's go back to properties, and it's just a mistake with the, with just a name. So you can fix anything like this. This is a good scenario. I can just come over here and just type help desk just like that. It's gonna probably make it fixed for me. Help desk. I'm just gonna remove the last name. There you go. Okay, so now our help desk account is a domain admin account. We can go back to the Windows 10 machine, and like I mentioned before, that we're not going to use a remote desktop services when we do something like this, our own custom learning. We're going to go to console. So when you go to the console and you just click on that little button right here, switch to console. If I go back now, I can log into this machine by going and do the other user, and you will type the help desk and the password, and you will see this screen. Click on agree. So now if I come over here and I basically want to install that feature first, I can come over here and just type I can click on start, and then here right click and then go to apps and feature, and now we can go and do the optional features over here. You see now it's not prompting me for that error, and I can come over here and add feature, and here I can look for group policy management. If you scroll down, it should be here. So this is the group policy management tools, and we're going to install that. So now we can manage group policy just like this from Windows 10 machine. So that's number one. If somebody asks you, this is an interview question, how do you add a group policy management on a Windows 10 machine? Just like RSAT, you did it in Active Directory, just like that, you have done that in Windows 10 machine when you have a domain admin rights and of course admin rights, and then you need to install that on this machine. So if we open a local group policy editor on this machine, so let's go ahead and open that. And if you do edit group policy over here, you can see it says local group computer policy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and expand Windows settings, security settings, account policies, and password policy. Now you see the difference. When this machine is joined to the domain policy is taking over your local policies. For example, 24, 42, 7 characters. Now, if this was a user and the user call you, what is the password length? If you didn't know this product or this management piece, no one have taught you this stuff, then of course you would reach out to your managers or people who work in your environment. You would ask them questions like this. Now it's great for someone if you can do this kind of training. This is a very basic training, and if you can come and do these things on a lab environment, then you can easily find these type of questions. And when you are in a reactive call, when somebody call you, you pick up the phone, you're in a reaction type of call, of course you need to know this stuff very quickly. Then knowing this stuff is very important. So now you know that the domain policy, when a computer is connected to a domain, is taking over and giving you these numbers. If you go back to our local computer that is not a part of this Active Directory, then it does not have this and it cannot have this. Even if you try to implement it, it won't work. So if we go back to our Windows 10 machine, we can first verify that tool. So you can change these settings if you have the tools installed, just like what we did. If you click on Start, and let's say you scroll down, and here you have Windows administrative tools, and if you scroll down, I think it's still installing the group policy. Now, if again, here's a problem. If it's not installing, that means you still have to go and change the DNS and do all that kind of stuff. We're not going to do that because we have done that in our last videos. And like I said, you can go back to domain controller to practice on group policy. It's going to be the same window. So where is this coming from? This Windows 10, when you saw the group policy changes, or sorry, the numbers, or how is this like coming? Where is this coming from? So let's go ahead and type that group, and let's open it one more time, and we're going to go to settings, security, account policies, and password policies. So where is this information coming from domain group policy? It's actually coming from default domain policy. So how do you check this policy? So one of the easy way is if you click on the settings, it's going to generate a report. You can close that, and if you scroll down, you see under account policies, this is where everything is coming from. Now, if someone wants to change this, of course, this is not going to be a helpless person changing these things. This is a policy-wide thing. A lot of changes in this happens from sysadmins or people who are more experts in this area will do these changes. So if you change this, you can practice by coming over here, click on Edit, and now you can edit a default domain policy for all of your computers that are connected to your domain. So we can come over here and we can go to Policies, Windows Settings, Security, Account Policies, and here's a password policy. If I double click on it, then this is where I can come over here and change things. So if we want to make the characters about 8, I can double click on this and let's make it 8 and apply and OK. So you can see, you can come over here, you can change things. Now a lot of companies will have this enabled, and this is where you're going to get those calls that, hey, my account is locked out. I tried 6 times and my account got locked out. So if you double click on this and double click on this duration and define this policy and then click on apply, it is going to automatically pick the other 2 and says go ahead and enable this. So if I enable this, you see 5 invalid logon attempts is added now. So now our domain policy is changed. So we can see that everything is changed on the domain. But if you come back over here in our Windows 10 machine, and even if you refresh, even if you turn this on and off, let's say you go back to that machine, is it going to be implemented immediately, or yes or no? The answer to that question is no, because it still needs to either restart that machine or log off that profile, or you need to run a command. That could be an interview question where somebody says, do you know how to run a group policy command to implement group policy changes? So if I come to the group policy, you see nothing has changed. It's still 7. So you can go to CMD, and this command could be an interview question where someone will say, oh yeah, the answer to this is gp update / and I'm just going to use force. So now it's going to go out there and it's going to force the changes from a domain onto this machine. If this doesn't work, some policies require a restart. So you may have to do a full restart on a machine to do this. So if I come over here and let's say I close this, and now I go back to group policy, and I open the account settings, so now the changes are made because of that command that I ran on this machine. So do remember this command is very important. Now another way to learn about group policy from your machine, let's say you don't have access to a domain controller like this, and you can't just come over here and click on settings and that the report is generated. Of course, that's not going to be available to you when you start working in a company. So you can do things from your machine as a help desk. When you log into the help desk computer, you can go to CMD just like that and right click CMD and run it as administrator. You need to make sure that this is under administrator, then type GP result. Now you want to learn more about group policy and how things are working. You can go over these switches one by one and try to understand what each switch can do. We are going to be interested in the H/H one. If you come over here, there's an example given over here. So now what you can do, you can type GP result /H, and here what you can do, you can specify path as well. So if I do C column / and I want to put GP results in there, I'm just going to do this like that, GP results.html. Oops, I didn't create it correctly, but we can change that name. So if I go to C drive, you see I created that file. Of course, I messed up with the extension. So if you come across, you're not seeing extension. So what you can do, you can go to view, and you can turn on file extension. And here, if you come back over here and click on file extension, it's gonna show. If it doesn't show, that means the file is not created correctly. You can right click and change this to HTML. So let's go ahead and do that. That's not a problem. So here we're gonna move this to HTML just like that. And now we're gonna save this file, and you see that it's gonna ask this permission thing, continue, and look, it's changed to the HTML. If I double click on it, and there you go, I can see everything in the same way that you will see on the server. It's basically the same thing. So I can come over here, go to the Windows settings, I can click on password policies, and there you go, I got everything from that Windows 10 machine. It's a really important and powerful thing over here for someone who's brand new to IT. You can print this out, take it home, and study it at home and see everything inside your company. They may have done a lot of GPOs on a printer level, maybe profile level, Wi-Fi, whatever it is. You know, there could be a lot of things going on. Like I said, group policy can go very, very advanced, and you don't need to do so much advanced things. But at the same time, you can see there's so much going on over here that you can come over here and kind of understand, and you even have logs available in this when you run this. So you can see right here, everything over here is available, and it can take you to events and so many things that you can do with group policy. So that's a really clean way. And again, you should come over here and understand these other switches and run it, play around with it, and get more used to this GP result from CMD so you can get more out of it. If you like more friendly and graphical approach, then even this is pretty good. But let's go ahead and cancel everything. You can go to the start. Let me pull this down, and here you need to type rsop.msc, just like that. So here's Microsoft Common Console. So when you click on it, when you open it, what it's going to do, it's going to run this graphical type of resultant set of policies is being processed on this specific username as a help desk. As you can see, it is kind of like a same local group policy editor on your machine, but if you look at it closely, it's help desk on PLAB Win 10. It's very powerful as well, because if you are more of a graphical person, you don't want to go through the whole settings. The reason I like to run a report way is that everything is in one page, and everything will be, whatever is changed, you're going to see that added to that policies. Right here, you have to kind of go inside everything, and you have to kind of dig deep in every single thing. So The good thing about this is this also only shows the things that are being applied. So if you come over here, you can see password policies, the same thing applied to. And where is it coming from? The default domain policies and anything else that you have configured in this. So for example, if you would have configured that on a domain level, and we come over here, of course you cannot change these because this is kind of telling you what's happening. Now the cool thing about this is that sometimes you may want to come over here and understand what's going on. So if somebody's talking about complexity or things like that, you may want to come to some of these things and just kind of like, then, so for example, if it says password must meet complexity requirement, you can double click on it and click on explain, and you can understand what complexity means. So if a user asks you, what is the complexity, then you're not just making up things. You can actually look at this explanation and create your answers from that. Here again, everywhere you click on, and if you double click on it, and there's an explanation to it, which is really cool, because if you want to learn group policy a little bit more advanced way, a little more deeper way, I think that would be perfect. So don't forget this too. It's basically rsop.msc, and it's a part of every Windows machine, Windows 10, and anything above or beyond, below, it's definitely gonna show you this. So definitely try this out as well. Now another cool thing about this application is that you can not only run this on this specific user, you can actually right click and then change the query. So if you click on it, you can see on this computer, you can click on next, and any user that is a part of this computer, you can select a user by clicking here, and I can actually run an admin, that is the local admin on this, and I can run this and see how this is going to process. So if I run this and finish, it's going to give me the policies that user is basically the users are getting applied. So if you have something different going on and you want to learn more about different users, maybe somebody's complaining about things and you want to come over here, maybe things are a little weird or something is not happening correctly, so you can run this just like that without logging off and logging as that user. You can actually do this type of stuff. So in some scenarios, you may be given access to deploy software, or you may be given access to go ahead and change some stuff that they have already been doing, or someone will say, hey, we have this request to deploy software through group policy. Do you know how to do it? So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. So deploying a software through group policy can be done, but you need to know that you need an .msi file for that. You cannot deploy a direct.exe file. You can convert the exe to MSI, but that's a little advanced stuff. That's something you can do a research when you get better with group policy. But here, if you want to go to group policy in practice, you will open the same server, go to Windows Administrative Tools, and here we're going to open group policy management, just like that. And of course, we need to create some stuff to work on group policy. And usually in the companies, people will not be using a default domain policy to deploy software. So usually in companies, if you have been watching our Active Directory series and you have done some fundamentals, you should know now that we can create an organizational unit to deploy a group policy on top of that unit. So if you go to Active Directory users and computers, and let's say we open that, and here we don't have any organizational unit available, we can create one right now by clicking on New and Organizational Unit. And here we are going to click on just create staff. So this is the unit that we want to deploy a group policy. Anything inside this will get the policy, so we can move the machines that we want to deploy the policy on. So let's say this is the machine that is already a part of this domain, and you can add a new domain if you want to deploy a policy on a new domain as well, like a computer, if you want to do a little more practice. So here you can go to the PLAB Win 101 and go to System, and in System, what you can do, you can come over here and click on Systems Info, and here you can convert this to a domain machine. So you can go to Change Settings, Change, go to Domain, and you can join this machines to practicelabs.com. And now here you can put the username and password. If you have created a help desk account, you should use that as well, if that works. So right now it says you're a part of this domain. We're going to go ahead and restart this machine, so then any group policies that we're going to build over here can be applied. So Now we're done with that. Of course, you can go back and actually you need to put this machine also inside the staff so we can apply that group policy and we can leave the Windows 10 in there in the container. So we have moved staff, the PLAB 101 to under staff OU. You can also create a user if you want to create that help desk user just to do a little more practice. Let's create a help desk account. Because I reset this lab again, so that account is gone. I can create this new one and we can put some passwords. And this is for all the practice that you want to do, so make sure you guys do the same steps, as we don't support any custom lab in our platform. We do not support this type of learning. You cannot go to support and ask them to help you with this type of learning because this is all custom. Now that help desk is a domain admin, we have PLAB Win 101. Now again, if you are going to be practicing for other users, you don't have to put other users as a domain admin. Most of the companies will not have it like that. They will have a lot of users, but they're not going to be a domain admins. So now we can go back to our group policy and let's go ahead and reopen everything. So everything is a fresh, let's go ahead and do this. And we can open a group policy just like that. Now we are going to set up a group policy to install a software from the group policy. So to do this, we will expand the group policy and we're going to go to our domain and expand it. Again, we're not putting this in our default policy. Usually people will use a new OU like this and they will create a new policy. So create a GPO in this domain and link it here. So we're going to basically create a new one and we're going to call it Firefox. So this is our policy. We want to install, of course, people don't just create a policy just for Firefox. They may say software deployment or whatever this is. It's going to have multiple things going on because in one policy they do multiple things, or maybe a company have a rule that they can put specific things just to make things easy. You have to look at your company's structure and you have to actually follow a real documentation to understand everything what I'm doing, because this may not be a standard way. This is just to show you how to practice a simple deployments. So if we want to deploy a Firefox over the internet to over the network to other machines, these other machines should be able to get to that file through the network share. So how is that possible? We need to create a share on this server. So let's go ahead and create that. So if you don't know how to create a share, this means you're missing again the basics. You need to take our fundamental part 1 and part 2 course to understand the sharing. So right click, go to folder, and I'm going to call it software. And now I'm going to right click on this folder and basically I'm going to come over here and click on sharing. And here I'm going to go to the advanced sharing and I'm going to go to share this folder, permissions, and we're going to basically add a domain users like this, and we can say for now I'm just going to give full access to domain users. Usually a lot of people will have everyone limited read only access so they can get into and do things. So at this point I'm just going to use this even everyone, I'm just going to say full access just to make things easier and have no issues. But again, in companies, people never do this full access kind of stuff. They do read only and write sometimes. So now that we have created the share, so from previous videos, you probably know how to get to the path like this. So if I want to test this path from a different machine, I can go into that PLAB 101 and I'm going to log in to the help desk account. And as you can see, I check mark this auto log on so that it doesn't log into the admin account. I want to make sure that I log in as help desk. Alright, so we have help desk logged in. So here you can verify to get to that path to make sure that you have access. You type PLAB DC01/ and we can see that we can get to that path just like that. But of course we need a software. Whatever you want to install, it has to have an MSI file because a group policy works with MSI. If it's exe, you probably have to convert that, but that's a little advanced stuff. We're just going to stick to what normally we need a MSI file. So any big product like Firefox or any other big application, they come with this kind of files because of deployment purpose. If you want to deploy these these applications to, let's say, 1,000 computers, then of course they create something like those type of files already for IT professionals, so things can be very easy. Now, only in this lab you need to do one thing to download this software. You need to go back and enable internet, because by default we don't have that available. So we need to go to our adapter, and we're going to click on Ethernet, and in Ethernet we're going to go to IPv4 properties, and we need to change this IP address. Before you do this, make a note of it, because this is the IP address of your domain controller right here. Unless, in case you forget it, you can go back to this DC do IP config and you can find it there. So here we need to type the Google DNS just so we can download the MSI easily. Now, of course, you would do this type of stuff on a server, because you want to gather all this software's MSI file in one folder and then create your policy. So it's already done. This is why it's taking so much time, because we're doing it from scratch, so you can learn. So now if we go in on this machine to a Google and let's say we search in Google, just type google.com like that. So before that, if you try it, it's not going to work. Why? Because your DNS is not changed. So you need to make sure you do my step to get to the internet. And here you need to type Firefox download MSI. So you may get this message in the lab. Click on agree, and then just click on back like this and type one more time, Firefox download MSI. So then you're going to see this link, the first link, deploy Firefox with MSI installer. So this is what the Firefox provide us, that you're going to scroll down and you're going to click on this link where every type of installation from Firefox is available. So normally Firefox comes with the exe, but you need to change that, and you need to click on 64-bit MSI. This is what we need, right, for Microsoft group policy deployment. We are going to download this file. And now if we go back to the folder, this is the application. Of course, I can just run it on this machine, but that's not the purpose, right? We want to do this deployment from group policy, so we need to put it back in the share just like that. So right now we put it in the share, everything is good to go, and we can close this. We know that this machine can access, so we can close everything here, and then we can go and make sure that change the IP address back, because if you don't do that, your group policy or matter of fact, nothing will work. Because if you change the DNS, this machine doesn't know anything about your domain controller, then things are not going to work. So we're going to go back, and we need to change this back to 192.168.0, and the IP address of the domain controller is 1. Okay. So all right, so everything is good. We can go back to our DC now, and now we can right click on our group policy, click on edit, and here we need to apply this on a computer, because anybody logs into that computer will get that policy. So if you click on expand the policy, there's software settings, and here's the software installation. You right click on this, go to new, click on package, and here you need to use that network path, right? You need to type that plab dc01/. If you don't do this, what will happen, if you just directly go to that file, then of course the other machines cannot go to it directly like that. So you need to type it just like this and click on software, and then pick the software, and then you need to assign it. You can learn more about group policy when you go to documentation if you want to go into that detail, but here you just need to assign. And now this group policy is ready to be deployed. So if you don't see it, you just right click, refresh. And now we need to make sure we have added this, but of course we need to go back and we need to apply this policy. So for now, I'm going to remove the authenticated users from here, and I want to just apply this to a computer, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and basically add the computer right here. So when you ever add a computer, you want to look for a computer, you learn from previous training that you need to click on object and you need to click on computers, and then you're going to look for computer. plab win101, and now we have added that computer. So before I do anything else, I want to see if it's going to work, or do we need to come back and change other things. So now the policy is implemented. You can go back to CMD just like this. Sorry, on plab 101. And here we need to type gp update/force. So here you see that the group policy client-side extension software installation was unable to apply one or more because of the change and must be processed at the logon level. So remember, some of these policy, when you add it in your group policy, it needs to be applied when a computer is restarted. If you put it on a computer level, computer needs to be restarted to get that policy. So we're going to say, oh, okay, to restart. We're going to restart this machine right now. All right, so let's go ahead and click on connect again. All right, so now let's log back in and see if it worked. And there you go. Firefox is already there. And this is the power of group policy. If a machine is turned off by a user, they're using it outside of their network. Let's say they're using a VPN connection and they take their laptop home, and once they connect to their VPN and they get into the laptop through a domain username and password, and if the group policy is to put up Firefox throughout the world, they will get a Firefox. They cannot run away from that. So this is the best way to use group policy for deployments, but of course group policy is not limited to that. You can do a lot more things. So maybe in your practice you can then add a new machine to the staff by going to Active Directory, move that machine, and if before moving that machine, maybe you should try, will this group policy work on this machine as well, because this is not a part of this machine now. This machine is not a part of that group policy. So if we do gp update force on this machine, will this also work? So most likely no, because if you look at it, the computer policy is applied, but it didn't give me that message. So we need to move this machine to that new policy for it to work. So this is how you can pretty much manage very much targeted type of things in group policy. Now in some companies you may be given a task to deploy printers or remove printers from print management. This is something that a lot of companies use commonly because in big companies, big organizations, printers are being managed. You don't just go to a computer and start installing printers directly or through USB. It's not possible with one of these big enterprise network printers. In some cases, yes, you may have to do direct connections, but group policy is very powerful when it comes to managing printers as well. You don't have to do this manually. If you already put users in the right OUs and everything is done correctly, then all you have to do is to just log in as that user or on that computer, and everything will work automatically. So in this case, what I did on plab 101, I did the same thing. I removed the DNS and I installed this application and put it in our share drive. So if you want to follow the same, you can download bullzip PDF printer, just the free version from internet. But you need to make sure that when you go and change the DNS to 888, you need to change it back to the IP address, just like what we did for Firefox. So let's go back to plab DC01. How does systems administrator or people with more rights create print management server? Just like Active Directory group policy, you can do this from the server. So we're going to go and click on server manager, and here we need to click on manage and click on add roles and features, and let's move this up. Let's go to next, and here you need to click on print and document services. It's a part of basically this role. We're going to click on add features. So we're going to basically click on next and click next. So then when you click on next again, there's a print server right there. We need to just click next and install. So right now we're installing a print server. So if you have, let's say, 50 printers in your whole network, that can be added to this printer server, and then you can manage all of the printers from other devices. So installation is completed for the printer server. We need to close this, and let's go back to the tools, and this is where the printer server is. Print management is available. So now you see you have only 2 printers available for practice. Of course, these are lab environments. You don't have a real printer right now. So if you come over here, these are the 2 printers, but the problem with these 2 printers is that they're not, you cannot share it. So we're not going to use this one. We're going to actually go and open that software on this machine that we have uploaded, and we're going to run this bullzip printer. So we're going to go ahead and install this. This is like you went out there, you configured a network printer on a network, and everything is done, and it has an IP address and everything is done. That's the physical part of it. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to assume that I went and installed this big printer, and it's called bullzip in this network, and I did the whole process right now. Alright, so now it's done. We're going to go ahead and finish it. And if I go back and basically to our print management server, if I refresh, you see there's a bullzip PDF printer available. Now this is where a lot of companies will have many printers, and maybe when you join a company, they may say, hey, can you add this new printer, or maybe can you deploy this new printer through a group policy. So of course they will have more documentation on this, but if you want to practice, it's pretty easy to do on a print management. When you're on print management server like this, you right click on here, and you can see there's this deploy with group policy is available. But before you do that, you need to go to properties and click on sharing, and you need to share this printer and just click on apply. So of course people can go to the machine and directly open a path to a printer and connect and add it to a device. So for example, if we go over here and let's search for printers. So if I click on printers right here, you see there's no printer added to this machine. But if I click on add printer, it is going to start searching a printer on a network. So this is where the printer is available. I can click on add device, but still I'm going to do this manually. And if a user is doing this, maybe they will get a username, they may have access issues. Okay, so to avoid that, and we want to automate this process, this is where you need to come over here now and right click again, click on deploy this with a group policy, and then of course you need to search for the policy, or you can create a new policy right from here. So you can see we have already created a Firefox policy, which our computer is on there. We're going to use the same policy, and I'm just going to check both computer and per user, and I'm going to click add here. So you see I added 2 policies, per machine and per user, and I'm going to click apply and OK. Now when you did this, what happened in the group policy, if you go back and let's go and edit this policy. So you could have done the same process from here as well by going to the policies, Windows settings, deploy printers. You see the printer is now being deployed from this policy as well. You can right click on deploy printer, and you could have done it this way too, but again this would be a little you have to find everything and make sure that things are working correctly, all that kind of stuff. So you see the bullzip printer is available here too. I could have done it this way, but that's to me, I think that's the easy way to do it from the printer. So when I come over here, you could do a CMD and GP update force, and let's say if that works. If not, we have to restart the machine. Alright, so we can go back and check in printers. So it may take some time. If it's not working this way, then of course you need to restart the machine. So we can actually do that right now. Alright, so let's go back and log in. So after restarting, let's go back and check if the printer is automatically installed. We're going to click on printers, and there you go. So now a user can manage this printer. They can test printer, and everything is just like a normal printer when you add it to a machine is available. So this is the power of group policy, from software installation to installation of printers, adding printers through group policy, running scripts. You can have scripts in group policy. Also, you can come over here, you can add scripts inside the group policy. You can do anything that's available in Windows. To be honest, it's so much that you can do. Firewall settings, and there's some templates then available. You can go into the control panel and just name it, you will find it in group policy. So go ahead and open your lab, practice, because with the practice, that's the only way you're going to get confidence, and then do the projects in JSS to get if this is a project leading towards a full overall certificate, then make sure to do that. Other than that, keep on practicing to get better at this.